My name is Nikki Lamb. I'm a director at Cushman & Wakefield on a third-party asset management team. Before that, I worked at Silverstein Properties in New York City on their acquisitions and development team. And then I started my career at LaSalle Investment Management here in Chicago.
So welcome, everybody. It's amazing that you guys travel. A lot of you traveled a long distance to get here, so we're honored to have you, and you that are closer by. Thanks so much for being here and participating in this. I love that they call this the Real Estate Challenge, because real estate is a challenge. And as you get to know, and as we talk about this project a little bit, you'll see what I'm talking about. The RFP came out, and we put together this team that we called GRIT. And GRIT stood for the Global Research, Innovation, and Tourism Team. We also think it stood for Get Ready, It's Time, because that's how we feel about investment here on the south side of Chicago. It's been coming for a long time. When we first were putting this project in motion, the city came to us right away and said, "Hey, guess what? Amazon wants to do their headquarters, someplace. There's their HQ2." So we were one of the sites that spent a year trying to lure them to Chicago. They wound up really kind of going to New York, and really not doing the project, as it turns out. We then recruited the 10th ranked hospital in the world, Sheba Medical, out of Tel Aviv, out of Israel. We were going to do a innovation building with them and have them lure startup companies from around the world dealing with life science and health innovation. The pandemic hit, that kind of killed that. Today, we're distracted again by the stadium talk. There is some, both the White Sox, the White Sox, the Bears, Chicago Fire, Chicago Red Stars, everybody's looking for a new home. We would love to put them here any one of them here as part of a mixed-use community. But the most important thing is community here. And that's in 2017, when we were awarded the RFP to develop this site, the GRIT team immediately embarked on engaging the community. And it really took us the better part of 6.5 years or so in order to really work with the community, work with the city, work with all the interested parties to come up with an agreement so that today we are fully entitled, we are fully zoned. In fact, the city has given us $60 million to do our horizontal infrastructure, our roads and rights of way and that type of thing. So we're well underway. We're getting a lot of support.
About 15 years ago, we spun off Chicago Neighborhood Initiatives as a separate nonprofit. We actually have two business lines. We do real estate development. So we bought an old steel site on the far south side, 200 acres, and have done that, and we've got about 12 or 13 phases that we've executed on now. And then we also have a CDFI, a community development finance institution called Greenwood Archer Capital, where we make loans to small neighborhood businesses. And so all of that in the context of community development. So when Scott approached about doing this project, this was kind of very much in our DNA. We had already kind of started in Pullman, and so looking at this site, 48 acres, and then if you include the marshalling yards with another 50, it was somewhat analogous to our work in Pullman. So we've been able to take some of the skills and tools that we've learned elsewhere and start to apply those here.
I've been involved in community economic development for about 35 years, and my relationship with this site, started. Certainly, as most of the community knows it, as the original Michael Reese Hospital campus. And I don't run into anybody who's still to this day, if I say we're working on Bronzeville Lakefront, they're going to say, I was born there, my mother worked there. There's just an affinity and a history about this site. And it's particularly important today because basically Michael Reese was a developer and left the site with the intent that all people, all races would have access to health care. So I think that we come to this, with sort of that legacy and blueprint in mind. But my initial involvement with the site was actually our mayor rushing to tear it down because we thought we were going to get the Olympics. And we sent the dream team to Copenhagen, and we came back empty-handed and stunned. And so the site had then been demolished. The next thing that happened is there was a huge RFP nationally for the Obama campus. And my small but fierce team of community developers decided that we were going to invite the Obama campus to come to this site that was already cleared, wouldn't require demolition, displacement, gentrification. And I got to tell you, I'm so proud. We did a hell of a job. There were 13 proposals internationally, and we were finalists in one of 5. And unfortunately, that site was really the University of Chicago's to win, and they did. But from there, we then had a site that we referred to as the sirloin on the lakefront. The site is known internationally. It ends up being 100 acres on the lake. International developers know about this site. And, it's probably closer to the lakefront than people who live on the Gold Coast. At the same time, when the RFP that Scott refers to came out, what to do with this site, we really felt like, hey, we've got history and plans with this. And the city was saying, we love you guys and we love your little band of bandits, but we're not going to give you this big site, so you better be smart and figure out who you're going to team up with. And at that time, my relationship was with David Doig, and didn't know he was already talking to Scott. And as we started looking around, I think they said, oh, what are we going to do about Paula? But the good thing was we kind of meshed together and have been on conference calls every 2 weeks for the last 8 years. Eric?
Yep, I'm Eric Mason with Farpoint, and I've taken a little bit of a different path here. So my background's on really more of the engineering and construction side of things originally. My undergrad degree was in civil engineering, and I spent the start of my career working for Turner Construction here in Chicago, and then made the switch over onto the developer side of things about 8 years ago. Originally was working on some hotel developments around the country on college campuses, and then went back for my grad degree a couple miles south of here at University of Chicago, which then led me to Farpoint. So been with Farpoint for about 5 years now, and really have been focused on the kind of technical day-to-day aspects of the project.
As Scott said, we're partners. We started Farpoint about 8 years ago. And my background getting into this was through Sterling Bay. I used to work for Scott. I was the second employee there. But really, my education was in doing, and more of just doing anything that we needed to get done. And it was, yes, I can do that. And if we're leasing or if we're designing or building on these small firms, it was great to get my footing there, and then kind of grew with him. We worked together for almost 20 years before we started Farpoint, and have been working together ever since. But we are actually trying to move the ball forward. And these big public-private partnership deals take a long time. So it might seem like it's stalled, but you got to be able to pivot, and you never know what to expect. We had, as Scott mentioned, a pandemic. We've had a lot of different directions. We've been zigging and zagging, but along that way, there's some really good milestones that we've hit. This is a construction site. When you guys walk there, we are putting in the infrastructure in place. And so these are kind of all these baby steps. And then the next thing that we're talking about too, as we had mentioned, is maybe a stadium and what happens to the work that we've done. But just having a team like this, we're able to pivot and be a little bit fluid on the direction. Again, on these long-term projects, there's no simple one path to get to the finish line.
Thanks. So it'd be great to hear, are there specific industries or types of businesses that the neighborhood would like to attract and that you guys think could be great for the site?
So when we got involved here, and what's still going to be today is to do a master development of a very mixed use environment here. So, but it needs an anchor. You need some sort of catalyst to get it going. And at the time, life science was the buzzword. So careful about buzzwords, right? Because they don't last forever necessarily. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of money, really working to attract tenants to do this innovation building here in Bronzeville, which we thought would create a lot of jobs and create a lot of opportunity for those that live in and around the neighborhood too. So we saw it as a real catalyst. We saw it as a real way to make this site a global magnet that benefited the local community. So that was going to be our catalyst at that point. We've moved away from that, but the things that we haven't moved away from are all those things that we did as we were engaged in the community. So as part of that, even though we were dealing with a very highly sophisticated innovation center, we were always going to do senior housing here. We were always going to build a community center here. We were always going to have a retail environment here. We were always going to do both affordable and market rate housing here. All that's still true. Even if there's a stadium now, everything is still going to go back to the core of the promises we made to the community, which are those things I just mentioned.
The vision initially was really to see this as Chicago's smart city. Bronzeville has been this city within a city all along. I really want to see us come full circle back to the big, broad, smart city concept. When we first were entertained in the city, said, yeah, we like your plan, but go talk to Google. A lot of what myself and the community was thinking about was, come on, Paula, we're developers. We still have to do things within reason. But Google was basically saying, we're not looking for a campus where we're going to be some isolated island and 2 blocks away, our employees can't work from home and dial in and have the same information. So I think, that kind of bolstered us again. We're on the right track and we've got to push. So I think community has to start pushing again in terms of the smart city piece. And even if it becomes the Bears Stadium, I think it should be the absolute example of what a stadium looks like on a renewable energy platform.
In order to be a successful development, you have to take the community into account. You don't want to land in someone's neighborhood and say, oh, I think this is what you should have, because you're going to get pushback. I'd push back in my neighborhood if someone said that to me. So a lot of what we came up with, there's a discounted rent for the retail, because we want to make sure that it's not just Starbucks, but it's the local sip and savor. Chicago is a city of neighborhoods. That is what why people go to a certain neighborhood to live. They want to identify with that neighborhood. And if you do a development that is void of that neighborhood, you're going to fail. If this development ends at 31st Street and MLK, and nobody bleeds out into the community and the community doesn't bleed into your development, you will fail. So you really, really have to make sure that what you're developing is sensitive to what people want in this neighborhood, but what people on an international level want as well.
Community is a very broad term, and it's very nuanced. It's not just the folks that live here, but it's kind of the broader geography of the South Side, and then the city itself.
When we first presented to this advisory group, what we have been hearing everywhere all the time was jobs, jobs, jobs. And when people say, well, how do you deal with gentrification, displacement? What's your strategy? Our strategy as community developers has been jobs. Jobs allow you to stay on the land.
So there was mention of an advisory committee that you guys spoke with in the past. Is there something that still kind of represents some folks that are in the community that we should go to or that we could counsel through this process?
There still is the Michael Reese Advisory Council, yeah. So they've been working with us for the last 7 years, and they've become kind of friends and advocates now for us. So yeah, they're still active, and I'm not exactly sure what the kind of sequence of their meetings are, but some of them have moved on and have been replaced, but it's still a viable organization.
And just a follow-up question, is there a community agreement with Bronzeville?
There is, yeah. We actually have a community agreement. Regina touched on them. There's probably 5 or so kind of key points. One is the commitment for this community center, which is very much kind of front of mind for us as we think about how to plan this. The second is the discounted rent for retail, for neighborhood retail. So we've set aside a percentage of the neighborhood retail at a reduced rent. The third is a contribution for public education. As we create residential demand and bring more units on, we've committed to contribute for the public education. The fourth is affordable housing. So we're looking at 20% of the overall units being affordable housing, and then specifically looking at senior housing as part of that. And then I guess the fifth would just be some of the broader, minority contracting opportunities, local contracting opportunities, things that are typically required in the city.
I'm a part of something called the Bronzeville Sports Commission. And what has happened is, Bronzeville has a lot of open vacant land. So just as we're talking about White Sox Stadium looking to leave, okay, if they do, that's right at 35th Street. This is where we are right now. If the Bears are here, we have the DePaul NBA. We are getting ready to be stadiumized.
For this project, the site that you're looking at is the north part. The stadium would be on the south side. So something that would be interesting to look into is how do we accomplish everything that we've promised the community on the site that you're looking at. So I would, kind of delve into that.
Chicago has had some really good case study, I think, experience, even with things like Wrigleyville, where you're talking about, what happens in terms of the goal for economic development, and when we say, oh, it's going to spill out into the community. But all of that spill out comes with all the things that you guys know. How do you park? Where do you come in? Is it a shuttle? So if that is really intentional, then all of that should be a part of the planning. And we have to, step up and say, hey, we've been living with this site for 8 years. There's a lot of things that we can share. That's certainly how we came to this team, and feeling like, there's a lot of not just conventional wisdom, but also a lot of really great ideas that, now might serve better with this kind of campus.
I like to say it's not location, 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 it's basis, basis, basis. So to make sure you're getting in properly, so those times that we've gotten in trouble, I would suggest that probably our basis was wrong. And that's, you got to believe your numbers. You got to make sure that you're not fooling yourself just to make the numbers work. The way we negotiated our deal is this is city-owned land currently, and they own it until we buy it either in parcels or as a whole if we're ready to, but probably in parcels. And therefore, our basis has remained the same over time, and there's been no negative drag on our deal, which makes it still very viable for us, notwithstanding the fact that elsewhere in the city, real estate taxes have gone up like crazy, so the carrying cost has gotten nuts. We have no taxes here, city-owned, so structure is important too.
Yeah, I would just say maybe this is the flip side of your question, but what is Scott mentioned basis. I would say the other kind of key factor is timing. And having a site that is basically pad ready and entitled when the opportunity comes along is as important as the location or what you've got into it. Because if you can't execute, then those opportunities pass you by. And I think that's one of our advantages here with the city ownership. We're putting in all this infrastructure. And if it's not the Bears, there'll be some other, large user that will want to come. And the fact that we've got this basically pad ready is a key timing factor, because when a company makes a decision that they want to go, they don't want to hear it's going to be 2 years to get the thing entitled and get the infrastructure put in. They want to know that they can execute within months. And so I think that timing element has been really important and will continue to be.
The cultural significance of the Brownsville neighborhood, both from the way back to the Michael Reese days all the way through the Great Migration, is something that we are totally focused on honoring. And the history here, we could go on for an hour about it. And it's really just an amazingly historic neighborhood.